This is Paul Farahvar, and you're listening to the Matt Balaker podcast.
All right, thank you once again for tuning into the Matt Balaker podcast. Today, our producer, Eric Servone, is not on the program tonight, but I think that's a good thing because our guest is a beacon of hope for him. It's someone who's shedding the light on what could be for our good friend and hardworking producer, Eric. Today's guest on the show is a comedian. He's a lawyer. He's one of Jamie Masada's greatest confidants. He hosts the Singles Only podcast, and he was the legal counsel for Greg Giraldo, A Comedian Story. Please welcome Paul Farahvar. How you doing, Paul?
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me. What an intro.
It is my pleasure. And I think thanks are long overdue. I mean, you were invaluable to finishing the book we wrote about Greg Giraldo. And for those folks who don't know, it's a huge process. It was my first book. And what I didn't know was the legal end. And you emailed me, I think, sort of out of the blue, and then offered your services for a very discounted rate. And I appreciate that. But for people out there who are unfamiliar with nonfiction publishing, like, what is the role of a lawyer when it comes to writing nonfiction?
Well, first of all, I did reach out to you because I saw that the book was coming out, and I'm a huge Greg Giraldo fan. So as a former lawyer, obviously it's someone to look up to. And I was like, when is this coming out? And then we started talking. And so that's how it started. I was like, yeah, I've edited books. I've done the legal on books. So I'll definitely do it just so the book gets out and I got to see it before everyone else. But the legal aspects that we generally, and then to be clear, I'm still licensed, but I don't practice law anymore. That stopped in 2020, but I still have a law degree. And the stuff is that you have to just be wary of I look at it from a litigation standpoint because I was a litigator. What are the issues? What are the areas where, even though you have the right to say what you said, are you going to face legal scrutiny? And the issues are generally, defamation, slander, invasion of privacy, things along those lines that you have to worry about. And then accuracy obviously is key, so you got to worry about that.
Matter, yes.
Yeah.
Well,
so
I'm proud to report, Paul, so far no lawsuits have come my way, which is great.
Well, we cut out all the parts that could have been lawsuits. So you're welcome.
Allegedly's and perhapses in there to soften everything. But have you been part of any book that has been litigated, or you don't have to mention names unless you want to, but what's that like?
No, none that ended up in litigation, but we did have a couple books where there were threats of lawsuits involving, higher names. Obviously, celebrities are where the books are in the memoir department or in the autobiography or biography section. So getting it authorized is always key, but I never had one that actually went to a lawsuit, but there were cease and desist letters by all means that you get all the time. And that's what you just try to want to avoid with litigation, with editing a book or nonfiction.
Right. No, it's good to avoid that sort of, it's funny because, I mean, I never wanted this, and I mean this in all sincerity. I didn't want controversy in a bad way. Like, I would rather sell fewer copies and have the people involved in it be happy with it than try to be a lightning rod. But I would imagine there are some, unscrupulous authors out there, or just, maybe not unscrupulous, just, you have a topic that's inherently more controversial and you kind of push that angle to sell copies, but that might put you in legal hot water.
Right. I think there's the double-sided sword, and everything, really in this social media world, sometimes you'll post something that, it can put you in legal scrutiny, but it's worth it because you get free publicity. Right. So a lot of people will do that. You'll see that on Instagram and Twitter all the time. Mm-hmm. So when I had clients, I'd be like, you have two options. You could address it if someone, is accusing you of something, or ignore it and hopefully it goes away. But if you give fuel to it by addressing it, that's kind of what it just gets more eyes on it, especially when you're dealing with slander or defamation, so libel stuff that's out there.
So it's the same rule of thumb for dealing with online trolls. Like if you don't breathe oxygen into it, they'll probably leave you alone.
Right.
Legally, it's similar. So that makes me
Yeah.
happy. Well, Paul, you were the first lawyer I ever met with at a Laugh Factory. So that's a pretty honorable distinction that you and you alone hold.
Okay.
And I remember it was the Laugh Factory in Long Beach. I think it was in 2019. It was pretty
right before the pandemic. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were so gracious to go through all your handwritten notes that.
Yeah.
And I remember because through this book, I got to know Jamie a little bit better. I mean, I had performed at the Laugh Factory in Hollywood, but we weren't like on a first name basis. But he seemed to have a lot of respect for you, and you guys seem to have a good rapport. How did that relationship begin?
Well, he passed me at the Laugh Factory in Chicago. So he became kind of a mentor to me because he used to come to the Laugh Factory in Chicago like every 2 weeks to watch the auditions of people. This was back when Laugh Factory first started. And so he kind of like guided my career. You know, he's a fellow Persian Jew like myself. So I think he kind of looked up to me. He was like a father figure to me in a lot of ways. So he got me so many options out there in Hollywood and my career. He's been instrumental for that. And then he also got me into the idea of charity because he's such a charity driven person. And now I'm doing a lot of charitable events. I started a 501c charity organization this year too. So yeah, he's just been great. And we met at the Laugh Factory in Chicago. And
so this isn't just to avoid paying taxes on what you do, right? Or if like, what can you give listeners out there more color on your 501c charity?
Yeah. So what it started was last year. I had a friend who was doing an event for autism, and I sell merchandise after a show. I'm like, well, what if I just mention on stage, I'm like, hey, I'm if you buy a shirt, 50% of the proceeds are going to go to autism. Mm-hmm. And then people responded to it, and it was cool. And then I did it for the Association for Suicide Prevention, and the thing I liked about it was that when you after a show, you make a connection with people who've been touched by that. So they asked me, what's my connection to autism? What's my connection to autism? What's my connection to suicide prevention? And then lately I've been very involved with the Parkinson's Foundation. And I love doing it not only for the charity aspect of raising money. All the profits from my t-shirts, these Better Call Paul shirts, go to Parkinson's Foundation. Not only is it helpful for me because I get to talk to people who are affected by Parkinson's. My father has Parkinson's, so I get advice from people, and then I call my dad. I'm like, hey, have we done this? Like, so it's kind of selfish in a way. And then obviously I get rid of, I have 1,000 people with my Better Call Paul shirts on them in the country, which is also cool. So
that's very cool. So I mean, I admire what you're doing. I have a friend who's involved with some suicide prevention charities, and he mentioned that I think for each attempted suicide or one that actually results in death, it affects like 100 people. So
wow.
I mean, again, I haven't scrutinized the statistics. I don't really care.
It makes sense.
It kind of shows the ripple. I mean, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of comedians die that way. And unfortunately, there's just too many people dying that way. And I think, people like you are shedding light on a very uncomfortable topic. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I believe that 100 people, suicide has affected me. I've had a lot of friends who've committed suicide or attempted to commit suicide, and it affects, the ripple effect, like you said, it's crazy. Somebody that wasn't very close to me early on in my life committed suicide, but it changed the whole projection of my life. Mm-hmm. And you start rethinking everything. So I think 100 is probably reasonable. I think that's how many people are affected by each suicide.
Yeah.
Maybe more.
Maybe more, you're right. And so I know you're based in Chicago now. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Chicago, the west suburbs of Chicago. And I was planning on moving to LA part-time. I think when we last spoke was when I was out there looking for places. And then everything changed with the pandemic. So now everything's coming back again. So I'm reevaluating what I'm going to do and if I'm going to stay in Chicago. But yeah, this has been home for me for all my life. So.
Well, I know I have family in Chicago. There's a great comedy scene out there.
Yeah.
How would you compare and contrast the comedy scenes in Chicago versus LA or other towns you've been to frequently?
Well, I think LA is, and Chicago, the biggest difference is it's a lot easier to get stage time in Chicago. There's so many opportunities here. And it's hard to leave because of that, because I remember when I was out there, the last time I was in LA was 2020. And I was just making sure that I was passed at enough clubs that if I traveled on the weekends, I had somewhere to go up during the week, because that's what I do in Chicago. I get to go up every night, and then the weekends I travel. So that's the biggest difference. And then obviously opportunities are bigger in LA, right? I mean, even from doing, 5 spots at the Laugh Factory in Hollywood, I've got, 3 opportunities from there that were life-changing. So there's more spots in Chicago, there's more opportunity in LA.
That's a nice summary. What were some of those life-changing opportunities?
Just auditioning for stuff, making connections with, I had the staff of Conan O'Brien at a show randomly once, which he's my idol, as you can see here. And then if you look up even further,
I'm a former Conan O'Brien intern. So
wow, I'm so jealous.
An idol of mine too. Yeah,
I have his quote up here that said, "If you work hard and are kind, amazing things will happen." So I got to meet, not JP Buck, the guy who makes all the decisions, but at least the staff knew who I was. And so that was cool. And I got some offers for acting through shows there, which I was like, oh, then I should just come to LA. It's always going to happen. Yeah.
So someone gave me a smile at the Laugh Factory. I'm going to move to LA.
Right. Well, it was funny because you'll do shows and then afterwards these celebrities would come and talk to you and you're just like, oh my God, you're in La Bamba. I just start talking to the guys and then people are trying to take a picture with me. I'm like, take a picture with me, take a picture with him. Look who's
Richie Valens, man.
Yeah, right. It was just crazy. It was just cool to see that happen.
Yeah, I think you were working on a game show.
Yeah.
At the Laugh Factory. Did that come from a show you did there?
Yeah, so I had a show called Everyone's a Lawyer where 3 comedians would act as lawyers and I'd host it and we give them different scenarios, real cases, and they act as lawyers. And it was a contest, non-scripted game show. And we were in talks with some big names and then they passed on it in 2021. But now a couple of people have expressed interest again. So that's something I'm still working on developing. And then I've also created a few other shows that I'm going to try to pitch in LA this summer. So I'm going to be back out there in June.
I know lots of industry listen to this show. And So I just you
I
guys
appreciate that.
Sign him. Paul, he's funny. He's trustworthy. We need more people like him. So don't waste a lot of time. Just sign him quickly.
Yeah, I agree. I still don't have a manager, so if you want to be my manager, I'm here for you as well.
I would do as much as most managers would too, especially those based in California.
That's true.
So
that's true.
You have an impressive. For those listening, Paul's in a studio and he has a lot of comedian and celebrity photographs, drawings behind him. I see Conan. Looks like Richard Pryor. Eddie Murphy.
So when we were doing the shows via Zoom, I just created this little wall of inspiration. So I've got Bill Murray here, Conan O'Brien, a Conan O'Brien quote. That's Robin Williams, but the light is blocking it, sort of. So I don't know if you can see it. Then Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, Mr. Rogers, because I love him. Mm-hmm. This is Rushmore. This is from Rushmore, the movie.
Okay.
Then I have David Bowie. And then this is may have been not something that I lifted from a Holiday Inn as a souvenir. And so I put that up there. And then Judy Gold, who's my friend, said I had no women. So I put a picture of her that she strongly dislikes on there. And then that's the cast of Taxi, which is one of my favorite shows. So
pretty eclectic wall of inspiration. And
Step Brothers right here.
Step Brothers, nice. big Chicago influence, I see.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
who are the comics that you first remember admiring?
When I was a kid, I remember my older brother, he's like 7 years older than me, took me to see Raw in the movie theater without my parents' consent.
Yeah, as I say, I don't know if your mom and dad would really want you to see that.
Yeah, but it was the coolest thing. I just remember I was like, this is so funny. And I didn't understand some of it, obviously, because I was like, a young, I think I was 13. And I was like, this is so cool. And then as I got older, I got into Chris Rock. I really liked Chris Rock a lot. And
What
then,
was Bring the Pain the
I
album
think that was the first, that or
Bigger and Blacker?
Bigger and Blacker, I think was the ones I listened to. I used to watch Johnny Carson and Letterman to watch the comedians after. And I just remember like seeing Jerry Seinfeld and Jake Johansson and just being like, oh my God, this is so cool, like what they do. So I definitely liked late night, the concept of a late night talk show, not only for, Johnny Carson, Conan O'Brien, Dave Letterman, but then when they had comedians or musicians on, I'd get into it as well.
Nice.
That was my favorite part, was the last part. So.
Well, I'm glad you watched those shows, because I remember as a kid, it felt like the forbidden fruit if I could stay up late enough to watch Letterman.
Yeah.
And inevitably they put the comedians last. Or if I could watch Evening at the Improv. I remember seeing Rob Schneider, and it was probably the tamest act you could have on television, but I thought it was so like, oh my gosh, I'm not supposed to be watching this. It was that naughtiness was something I'll never forget.
I remember in 8th grade, I had Andrew Dice Clay cassette tapes.
Yeah.
And my friends and I would just memorize it and listen to it. And I was like, this is so crazy. It was so
his nursery
naughty
rhymes were up there. I remember huddling around a boombox listening to Dice, and then either before or right after that, Two Live Crew. So they're kind of like one and the same.
Yeah, so I love that as well.
Well, I'm glad you had some disjointed parts of your youth, like I did. At least when it comes to entertainment. But when was it that you figured, all right, I'm going to take the stage myself?
So I was first a musician. I always thought when I was younger that I'd be a musician turned politician. My goal when I was younger was to
instead of actor politician, you'd be a musician politician.
I had this whole principle down that I would. I remember being in college and I was like, all right, I started playing guitar, started playing in bands. I'm like, I love politics. Like, I love music. I'll be a one-hit wonder, and then I'll propel that popularity or name recognition to go into politics, to do good for the world. So I thought that's what I was going to do. So comedy was never on my radar until later in life, actually. Like, I started taking improv classes at Second City just to support a friend of mine I was trying to encourage to follow his dreams as comedy. I'm like, look, at that point I had already stopped playing music and I went full-time law. I was like, at least I gave it a try. I don't want you to regret it. You're so talented. And then he goes, well, I'll take the classes if you go with me. I'm like, okay, it'll be fun. Nice. I just get to go to improv classes. Maybe it'll make me a better comedian. And then
before Second City, had you done stand-up?
No, never. Okay. So I did improv for about 6 months. And then my friend, same guy, got an opportunity to open for Bob Saget. And then I went with him as his manager, because I was managing bands at the time and I was a lawyer for people, because that's what I converted into when I stopped music. I started managing bands and doing entertainment law. And so we were backstage and I started talking to Bob Saget, because my friend was like freaking out because he's about to do a show for a sold out casino of like 2,000 people. And I just sat in Bob Saget's green room and he had a guitar. I started playing. He like let me touch it and I started playing it. And then I told him a joke or a story and he goes, oh, are you doing that tonight? And I was like, oh, no, I'm not the comedian. I'm just my friend's manager. And he goes, you should go up. And I was like, oh, no, I don't do stand-up. Like,
people are throwing stage time at you, Paul. I've never heard of this.
I think that, obviously we know now that other comedians stick around to possibly get a guest spot, but I didn't know that at the time. I wasn't trying to get stage time because I was never a comedian.
Right.
So that conversation, I started talking to him, and then he goes, "Well, just go do what you just said. I wanna call back to that." I was like, "Oh no, I'm not going up. Like I've never done stand up in my life." And then the room started like kind of talking. My friend walks in. He's like, "Yeah, he does improv. He can go up and do it." And I was like, "I'm not going up." Like all these people were talking to me and trying to talk me into it. And Bob Saget was the ringleader. And so finally I was like, it's not going to happen. But I didn't go up. But then the next day I did an open mic contest, and I think I won or came in second place. And I was like, this is great. Yeah. And then the venue that had the contest was like, "We like you better than our host. Do you want to take over this contest as the host?" And I was like, I think I just did a lot of crowd work because I didn't have material.
Things were happening for you from the outset.
It all was all because of Bob Saget, and I wrote about that in an article for CNN. But that's 100% why I started comedy. I always thought I might do a stand-up set, but it wasn't really on my radar. I was helping my friend more than anything.
Well, thank you, Bob Saget, and
yeah,
thank you for helping your friend. So yeah, I know you do a lot of crowd work. How did improv training influence your stand-up?
I think improv training taught me to think on your feet. Two things that it taught me most was just being able to react and be in the moment, and also truth in comedy is what they taught me. So that's helped me write and influence my writing as well. Because I remember I had a teacher by the name of Gelman who was like there for 30 years. He was name dropping people from years ago that he taught, but he was just like, "There's funny in everything you do every day. Think of a conversation that happened." And that's how we would start scenes. And then I was like, "Oh yeah, I could just talk about myself." And that's pretty much how I started comedy, was just telling stories about myself. And then I found the funny in that.
That's really smart, because when you make this autobiographical comedy, there's much less chance of someone ripping it off or it looking unoriginal.
Right.
I think that's always a fear when people start. Did someone else do that joke? But if your experience as a Persian Jewish kid is different than mine. So if you kind of play to what it's always going to be unique, and it'll always be you. I think that's really smart.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's funny is because like I'll do a tweet or something that's parallel thinking, and someone will be like, "You just took that from so and so." I'm like, you know what? I did not. I don't even follow this person you're talking about. It's just parallel thinking. I remember somebody during the pandemic, I wrote a tweet that was like, "I'm gonna," they told us we should wash our hands and sing "Happy Birthday" twice, and I just wrote, "I'm gonna do it once, but I'm gonna do it like Marilyn Monroe did it to John F. Kennedy." I thought it was hilarious, but then someone was like, that's so and so just tweeted that 2 weeks ago. I'm like, okay, well, number one, I don't follow whoever, and I was like, and I just would get frustrated. That's what you're like, right? With comedy, it's like people can't steal my jokes. There are some premises that are obviously like being single and whatnot.
Sure.
And I have seen people.
Well, premises and jokes, are very different things.
Right. Well, there's punchlines that come from there, and I think that and I was talking to a comedian recently. Like, there's a reason I don't watch other comedians that sound like me, because I don't want to pick up anything. I know that when I was on tour with certain comedians, like I toured with Gary Gulman 4 years ago, and after like the fourth show, I started noticing I picked up some of his mannerisms, like his smile and his like smirk, and I was like, "Oh my God, like this is horrible."
You're not consciously doing it, but it's going to influence you. Yeah.
It's just like when you start talking to someone from Alabama, you pick up an accent. So I didn't want that to happen. So I hardly ever, if there's a comedian that kind of sounds like me or has my point of view, I just try to walk away.
You're like, I like this comic so much, I'm never going to watch him perform.
Yeah. Well, the comedians I really like in Chicago are comedians that are like so different than me. So I'm like, okay, I know I'm never going to pick up anything, so I like watching them. But like comedians who are like Middle Eastern or have like the same sensibilities as me, thankfully, like the law stuff, the stories I tell about being a lawyer are very are very personal. So
Mhm.
I know that there's some lawyers that do comedy. So I'm always like, I saw one of them try to like take something of mine. I don't, maybe they didn't do it purposely, but I was like,
Mhm.
okay, you can't do
Yeah.
that.
So I'm curious, Paul, what was your law school experience like?
Well, I went right into law school right after college, at the same school I went to before. So I went to University of
Okay.
Illinois in Champaign. I did not
Illini.
understand. Yeah, I did not understand that the amount of work that you were supposed to put in law school my first year. I treated it like fifth year of being in college. So I was working at a bar, I was playing in a band. All my friends were still there, and I was in a fraternity. I worked at a bar. So like I would go out just like I did. The only thing I changed was like maybe I stopped drinking as much, but
Mhm.
so my experience was different than others because I call it bizarro world because
Bizarre world.
in law school, the kids who were, if you think of high, it's like bizarro high school is what it is. In high school, they were the cool kids who were like jocks, socially balanced, for lack of a better word, not awkward, popular, whatever. You were popular because of things that you were outgoing.
Mhm.
In bizarro law school, high school, it was the opposite. Like all the nerds who are awkward were in charge.
The
And
script was now flipped. Yeah.
so us cool kids, there's like six of us that we were like theoretically cool on paper, which is
Yeah.
like you were
My CV says I'm cool.
yeah, like I was I won state in college. In high school I played Division I sports or whatever. Those people were relegated to the back, and like
Back of the line, jock boy.
we weren't invited to like parties, and like we were just frowned upon because they
You've
knew we
kissed
were
a girl, you have no place.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it's exactly like that. The people that were the most awkward were in charge. And so it was just bizarro world. And I remember my friends and I, we all lived together second year of law school, and like we were hated because when we'd have parties, we would invite people like who we liked. When the law school people would otherwise have parties, they invited the whole law school. And you're like, I don't want these freaks in my so that was my experience. And I quickly learned after the first year of law school that like, oh yeah, like you can't get straight B's in law school because you're not going to get a job. And then
that's for business school, but if you go to
yeah,
law school, you actually have to pay attention.
But by that time it was too late. And by that time I kind of knew that I wasn't going to live a traditional lawyer life. I wasn't going to work at a big law firm working 80 hours a week. Like I wanted something that was manageable, and I wanted to get into entertainment and copyright law. And I didn't have the grades to move to LA to do that. So I created my own path after I graduated from law school. So
yeah, so not being on the law review kind of forced you into entrepreneurship.
Not only was I not on the law review, for those that don't know, law review is the top 10% of your law school. I was like in the reverso law review. Like I was the anti-law review. I was in the bottom.
You're what they reviewed. They're like, how the hell did you get there?
They were like, are you sure they were trying to kick me out of the law school because my grades were so bad. They were like, what are you doing?
Like,
and I mean, and it all worked out in the end. Like, I mean, listen, law school grades, and I learned what the classes that I enjoyed, I did well in. And I just wasn't a good test taker. And then I figured out how to take tests my third year of law school, my last year. And by then it was like too late.
Well, at least it's before you had to take the bar. So
yeah. And the bar, yeah, that's true. And then when I took the bar, it's actually like while I was studying for the bar that I learned like, oh, that's how you write an essay for law. Like I was like, if I knew this back then, I would have gotten A's. But
so how did law school prepare you for life as a lawyer?
I would say that it gave me the basics of what I did. I was a litigator, so there were certain classes that helped me. The hands-on classes were the ones that I were the most appealing to me. Obviously, like there were unique classes where like trial advocacy, where you actually had to try cases. So civil procedure, that was important to me because those were the things that I used when I was a lawyer, because I was actually a trial lawyer.
Actual law work. You saw the inside of a courtroom.
Yeah, I had more jury trials than most people have in their lives, and I only practiced for 10 years full time and a handful of years part time. So I tried cases. I had a case against Johnny Cochran's law firm. So like
Wow.
we had real cases. So for law school to prepare me, I mean, the discipline did. I think the bar helped me more than anything because it taught me the discipline to prepare for a trial, and cramming for finals was a lot like cramming and preparing for a trial. But in all honesty, like that was the only parts of law school that were helpful. And the classes that obviously like copyright, which I use later in life, and the civil procedure courses, but like 90% of it, the classes I took that we had to take, like criminal law, civil procedure, property, all those things I never ever use again after the bar.
Okay.
And that was a lot of law school.
That is a lot. So it's three years, right?
3 years law school.
What you've done. I don't want to say how many thousands of dollars, but generally it's not free. And I'd like to get your opinion, Paul, because our friend and producer, Eric Servone, has recently been on a little bit of a soapbox. I'm going to try to paraphrase his argument as best I can, but I'll probably butcher it a little bit. But he's spent 3 years at law school. He went to Notre Dame, so good,
Oh wow,
well-schooled attorney. Practiced for a few years, and within, like he said, the first few weeks, realized law is not for him. He kind of did it because, like a lot of smart 22-year-olds, I'll quote the Greg Giraldo book, dragged along by fate. And he argues, Paul, that law school should be abolished. And here's what he says. He says, before law school, you learned the practice of law by working under an attorney. And he said, or if it's not abolished, at least keep it to 1 year. Because he said there's so much extra stuff. And he contends that there's a huge financial incentive for the law schools themselves because they kind of have a monopoly on it. If you need this degree to practice, they're the only game in town. And also a lot of lawyers write laws, so they want to make it as hard to get into as reasonably possible. And he says that, like, if he was able to train under a lawyer, say for 2 years, he would be better prepared, and students would have less debt in general. And just an overall more efficient system. So that's his take. I'd like to get your report.
I mean, there's definitely I agree with parts of what he says. I think that most of what I learned as a lawyer, I learned from working as an intern or a clerk at a law firm. And I did that outside of the walls of a law school. But the ability to think critically for some people, and especially you see this a lot in social media where people are arguing things, that ability to think critically, I think, came from law school. I had it before, but I think it hones those who have it before, and it teaches those who never had it before. So it's almost like a mechanic learns on the job, but like there's certain parts of being a mechanic that you'll never get unless like you put in the work. And comedy's the same way, right? You could be a comic without putting in the hours or stage time, but are you going to be? There's a lot of comedians who are so-called comedians on TikTok now that have never ever been on stage. But are they going to? The longevity of it, I think, for law school of being a lawyer is, I think you kind of need some formal training. I don't. Maybe he's going somewhere with the 1 year.
I mean, maybe the question is, and we'll have to have you back to do more lawyer talk.
Sure.
But I think the question is, what is the mechanism of that formal training? Like if you were an apprentice at a big law firm and you worked in real estate and you worked in corporate finance, or you did defense, or you did copyright, almost like a medical school after your second year, you really go out in the field. I think he would argue that you can pick up a lot of those skills that way versus being in a classroom.
Well, a lot of the law schools now do that, where you have like my third year of law school, I was an intern at a law firm, so I was working, and I didn't get credit for it, but there are ways that you can get credit, and you get like training on the job if you're going to do trial ad or whatever. But yeah, I mean, there is something to be said for that. And you can still take the bar in certain states without going to law school.
California's one, but I think that's the exception. And again,
yeah, I mean,
I'm not the expert on this, but I think
no, you're right.
The majority of states, you need to go to law school.
Yeah, but like if you can pass the bar without going to law school, so be it. I mean, and I knew a lot of people that
Kim Kardashian.
Oh, is that right? Like there's people that are could think critically that I know comedian wise that never even graduated college. So there's an argument at that level too, where college is becoming obsolete.
Sure.
So the question is like, how much value do you put on education and critical thinking? And I think that law school, I would argue a different argument on your producer in saying that people should go to law school even if you don't want to practice law, because there are parts of it that I think our society would be a lot better off if we all could think critically. And
so Twitter's not the best place to learn critical thinking.
Well, the thinking, the thinking, the strategic ways that people can learn to think critically, and they'll teach you how to do that. And whether that's through the Socratic method at classes, I would put lawyers above people that go to grad school. Because if you look at the people that are, I remember there was a study done of CEOs, and there was a large percentage that didn't get their master's or their master's in business. Or a BA, they went to law school. They didn't get their what is it called? The
MBA or
the MBA, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think the rigor is one thing that is valuable. I mean, how often are you going to put yourself through those hours and hours of homework?
Right. And the thing to me, and I'll say this is an honest thing. When I'm voting for a candidate for politics, if they have a law degree, and especially if it's a good law school and they practice law, I'm more likely to vote for them, because I think that they understand the laws and they understand critical thinking. And so that's something that's important to me, at least when I'm thinking about politics or things like that. And I do have a profound respect for people who did suffer through law school. I think it's a lot to do. I think there's a lot of BS that goes with it. But should it be abolished? I don't know. The same argument can be made about any education. But
yeah, and I think you would agree with that. Well, that was super helpful. I'm glad to get a little different perspective. I want to learn more about your decision in 2020 to sort of abandon law. Can you take us?
Well,
I don't know if abandon's the right word.
I walked out. I closed my firm on March 1st, 2020, unbeknownst to me that the world was going to end. And people always ask when they find out, like, are you serious? Like, yeah, I mean, that's literally, and then I made so many bad mistakes that last month because I thought COVID was going to be 2 weeks. I had to cancel because I was too busy working. I was traveling so much, and my schedule for 2020 was going to be the busiest it's ever been. And so I had to close the office. I was like, what am I doing? I had one last trial in February of 2020 to finalize. And I had left my law firm years before. So I was on my own, and all I was doing those last 2 years after I left my firm, from like 2018 to 2020, was I wasn't taking on new clients. I was just handling existing clients and just working part-time to get myself out of law and figure out a way to monetarily make it work as a comedian. So that's what happened. And then the world changed, and I was like, oh, did I just screw up? But then then I was like, things started to come back slowly, and I was like, okay, no, I don't think I'd be happy. And then once I figured out the financial aspects of surviving without the money from law, I was happier. And people, I just wrote a blog about this. Like, I don't think I would have changed anything about leaving the law. I might have waited a little bit, but I wouldn't have canceled my business interruption insurance, that's for sure. But otherwise, everything I would have probably done the same.
I want to read this. Where where can I and listeners out there read
the
this?
blog, so it's on my, I blog every week on my LinkedIn page of all weird
Mhm.
places, but then I started putting on my website, which is at paulfcomedy.com. And I just, every week I put on something that, like someone asked me a question. I'm like, you know what? If someone asks me a question more than once, it definitely goes on the blog. Like this week, today I posted, did that really happen? Because people always ask me, like, is that a true story I tell on stage? And I'm like, yeah, it is. I mean,
Truth
obviously,
in comedy.
that's exactly
what you're
that's
all
why I was
about.
on. That's why I was on the tip of my tongue. But a couple of weeks ago, or last week, people asked me, "Do you miss law?" And there are, yeah, of course, I miss parts of being a lawyer. But overall, the parts that I liked wasn't happening as often. Like trying cases was the part I loved the most, and people just don't try cases anymore. So,
Well, legal's losses, comedy's gains. So we're very happy you made the switch.
we'll
For
see.
people out there who want more Paul Farahvar in their lives, where can they learn about you? Where can they see you? Where can they follow you?
I'm touring right now. I don't know when this is releasing, but I'll be in Las Vegas next week, and then I'll be in Florida the week after that. You can see all my dates at my website, paulfcomedy.com, or follow me on Instagram, which is just my name, Paul Farahvar, Farahvar. But if you put Paul FAR, it pops up. So that's good.
Well, please follow him. Go to his shows. Buy any product he's hawking. It's
The
worthwhile.
shirts. All the profits
we'll
go to.
put the links below.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you back, Paul. But thank you so
Anytime,
much
man.
for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and thanks again for letting me be a part of the Greg Giraldo book. I talk about it every time someone talks about Greg Giraldo. So
Smart man. Thank you.
yeah, thanks, man.